Good afternoon, everyone. It is Christine here, and I'm going to share with you a little project that I'm going to make using some of the items that I've picked up from the op shops here in Mallacoota in Victoria. So if you watched my mini haul video from yesterday, you would have seen this placemat, a beautiful cotton, but a really thick, almost sort of stiffened cotton, or possibly it's just a really thick weave of the fabric. So it's just a placemat made in India. It has a little tag on it. Looks like it's been very well washed, or possibly the design was always made to sort of have a slightly more sort of muted look, but still quite bright colours on it. So what I've done is I want to turn it into a project bag, similar to the project bag that I made here, but it's going to be a simpler design because we're just going to use the placemat as our base, whereas for this piece I actually stitched a number of pieces of fabric together, two pieces, and then did some extra folding and edging, etc. But we are going to embellish this piece with some additional goodies from the op shop, plus a couple of goodies that I brought with me. So I thought we could put it all together. I could talk about how I'm going to then sew it, and we could even start the sewing process. I probably won't make you sit through the entire sewing process because it's going to be pretty straightforward stitching. But what I've done is I've worked out the size I want the envelope section to be, and I've just given it a gentle iron. And so I just want to have a flap at the top of about that much. I don't have a measuring tape with me. That's sort of my little embroidery scissors for comparison. So it's just enough to well and truly come over, even when it's got a few contents in it, and just a nice sort of, I guess, proportional sense. But you can do it to your desired size if you are using a placemat or table mat or something rectangular. So that's going to be the back of it. And then the front will be like this. And so for the front, I'm thinking I like to make them look like a little envelope, like I've done here, with a stamp and a label. And the great thing is, if you have a fabric label and if you've got a friction marker, you can write on it with the friction marker and then apply heat either with an iron or a hairdryer, and the friction marker will actually erase itself. So I want to put a little label on this one, and I'm planning to use some of the bits and pieces that came from a tea towel that I got from another of the op shops, or not a tea towel, I think it would have been a little hand towel. And so this is one of them. They all had slightly different flower colour designs on them, so I've decided to use this one over here, but this is just what the whole tea towel or the little hand towel looked like before I started sort of going into it. The reason I also use this one, as well as the fact that it's got a nice purple flower on it, is this one also had some markings on it. They're very faint, but there was a little schmershy marking down here and down here that didn't come out in the wash. So we'll be using that in the inner area, I think, of it, but let's get the front sorted. And so, yeah, the pink just came from the trim along the edge of it, but I thought that could make a nice little label. Here I've got a little stamp-like creation. It's on fabric, and it was where I did some of my practicing of transferring printed images on paper onto fabric. So it forms almost a sort of a canvassy feel, but it is definitely fabric-like in that you can bend and fold and stitch into it. So that's using Fabric Modge Podge, and you can see some videos elsewhere on my channel for how I go about doing that. So I thought that could be a nice little stamp up there. Thought we could have a little label here, and then I've got these little hexagon shapes which I made using Epiflex hexagon templates. I've shared another video on my method for those if you want to look that up. I'll try and remember to link those few videos in the description section, so you can check them out if you want to. Let's just take the bit of thread off there. So I was thinking this could be quite nice as a little label, like that. So we might pin those in place so we have them. Now I only want to pin through the top layer of fabric because we don't want to pin the two layers together yet. Because what I'll do is I'll first of all be sewing these elements onto the envelope before I stitch it together, because it'll be much easier to sew them when the envelope is still open. So you just want to get that sort of in a pleasing position. Pin my little stamp on as well. Can you hear the bird call there? Still in lovely Malakuta, gorgeous day today, blue skies. Oops, something just blew away down there. I'll pick that up in a moment. Let's just pin this in. It's always a little bit harder to pin when it's got that that Modge Podge on it. Okay, so I think that will probably be the front. I want to leave enough of the design showing because it is such a pretty design, and I don't want to sort of embellish too much, given they will be project bags, so they'll be slipping in and out of other bags, etc. when I'm taking projects with me somewhere. So for the back, I was thinking we would use this part of that little hand towel, but I was thinking we would put it so it shows when you open the bag. And just having it coming just down into the bag, I want to have that little purple flower showing. So I'd torn this down just to the size I wanted. I put a little crease in the middle so I could work out where the middle of the bag was and where the middle of this was. And then I just used my little scissors to put little snips into the fabric and then tear it down. I decided not to do that on camera because I'd probably end up bumping my camera. So I think I'd like to have a little bit of overlap like you can see there. Not quite that much though. So let's just jimmy it down a little bit. And I quite like having the raw edges. I think they add a really lovely touch to pieces. If you didn't want to, you could obviously turn them over or not have them sort of extending down past the piece. So I think that's probably a nice position. Let's just maybe pin that in place. These little quilting pins are quite good, although this one seems, normally they're, it's because it's going through the quite thick fabric. I'll just take it through the thinner, not the doubled over fabric. It'll be interesting when I start to stitch whether it's a bit hard because it's quite, as I say, quite a dense fabric. So I'll pin that there. Let's have a look how it's then looking. Oops. Let's smooth it down. And so that will be perfect because I wanted that little purple flower showing there. You've got the little yellow one showing, so I think that will be pretty super. And those little bits where I said there's just very faint staining on that, you won't even see that because that will be inside the pocket. But the staining just means that it has been used and loved, which is always nice for vintage goodies to know that someone's actually made use of them. So we'll do that. So that would be a lovely element there. And then I was thinking, I've got this other little doily that I also got from one of the op shops here. I've got, I think, 2 of these ones with beautiful little Scotch thistles, which, as I mentioned, my dad's side of the family has Scottish heritage. So it's always nice to use something. Let's just measure and get it approximately central. Everything's very approximate with me. Let's just move it down a smidge. So I thought that might be nice as well. So it's almost like a little vase, just adds an extra element to it. So I might pin that in place. And again, we'll get this stitched on before we stitch the bag together. So, and then I was wondering whether I wanted to put a little something on here, and also I was pondering using one of these little clips that I got from the curtains that I dismantled. So I've got lots of these because I ended up getting the second lot of the curtains from the op shop. This is just such a lovely fabric. And I've got a little bit that also came off the tea towel that I thought I could make a little hook or a little sort of loop with that could then slip through this hook, somewhat like that. And that would keep the envelope closed. With the other envelope I made, I haven't put an actual closure on it, but I thought that could be kind of useful. And because the clips came from here, it will be a nice little souvenir of here. So I think I'll also sew this little loop of fabric in. Now I wonder if I should just give it a quick fold so I get to see where the center is again. Okay, so I've got a little central mark there. And that will be good if I can stitch that into there, I think. So stitch that down when I'm stitching the other piece down. I think that will give it enough hold. Someone's starting up their motor in the distance. All the bird song, and then you get the human song. Okay, and then on the back I've got these little leftover bits that I brought away with me that were from another doily when I was making my little slow stitch snail and my busy bee door hanging. Again, another video in case you haven't seen it and want to check it out. I'll try and remember to link it. I thought I might use a little bit of this edging piece to maybe just put a nice little element, maybe with one of my other little hexy shapes, somewhere on the back. Have to work out where I want it to go. Don't know if I'd want it sort of over here. It's always just about creating some interest for the eye and not always putting things totally centrally. So that could be quite cute. Maybe like that. Or would I want to have a little shape there and a little shape down here? I think I'd like them together. Always got to audition your fabrics. Don't know which way I want it to go. I like it because that green goes nicely with the green of the piece. Sure. I quite like that up there. I think that works quite well, so I will clip that in place too. Put a pin in that to hold that in place, and put a pin over here to hold this one in place. And then probably put this just a smidge up above where I think it needs to be in case the pouch gets a bit more bulging, and then I don't want this fabric to be having to stretch too much, so I'll probably stitch that just a smidge up. Don't think I'll be able to pin that in place. To hold it in place, I think we'll just have to sew it on when we get to that. We could actually sew that on at the beginning of it. So I think we're probably ready to start sewing it together, because I think I'm happy with that, happy with the position of that. I need to give it a proper iron across here because it's not still got the sort of the central fold it had in it. But I think that will be a nice balanced cover for it. And then a bit of visual interest on the back, and then you flip it open and you've got something really nice to look at, because often when I'm working with my other project bag, like travelling in the car, I have it sitting open on my lap like that, so it gives you something nice to look at. And I think the colours work well. It's got the sort of the greeny colours, the pinks, the purples, and likewise here the purples and the greens and the blues and the pinks. Okay, so now we've got it all pinned down. I'll go away and stitch down the different elements that we've pinned in place, and then we can come back and finish together, have a look at that, and then finish together stitching the envelope together. That way I won't bore you with the stitching down. I'm just going to be doing little over stitches, and I'll show you the different stitches I've done, but it's very open and flexible. You could even do your own over stitching over some portions of the fabric as well. But I think I'm quite happy with the embellishments that I've got in place, and that will add enough visual interest. So I will be back in the merest of moments for you with stitched down pieces. So I'm back to share my finished stitched together fabric envelope or project envelope that I made using a placemat, and I've added my embellishments and I've stitched it down the sides to stitch it together. So starting from the front, we've got my little hexagon made out of multiple hexagons, and I made those using Epiflex flexible templates, which I'll add a video to my approach to making those. I then used part of the little tea towel or little hand cloth edging, which I used also on the interior as well, and I just put a little purple running stitch around that. You might find it easier if you are doing something like this. You can draw where the little where you want the dashes to go with a pen, like a friction marker, which erases then when you apply heat to it. I added my little fabric stamp transferred from paper, printed with an inkjet printer. And I've got a separate video on that I'll put in the description. And then on the back, I've put a little MM to recognise that Martha Managros was my inspiration for this particular piece, both in terms of the colours, but then also in terms of the stitching I've done on the inside with the word joy, because she's currently doing some beautiful flags, sending out good messages into the world. And I'll remove a bit of Travis glitter from it. So it's got this little doily which had a Scotch thistle on it, and I've just done again some running stitch around here. I'd first of all stitched it down just with some white thread as well, and made sure I stitched down the back as well. And then in the interior I've got this lovely hand towel that had this beautiful floral design, so it just extends down to here with a nice raw edge, but I've stitched down that raw edge along there so it won't catch on anything. But I just love when you open up the envelope, you've got almost like a bouquet of flowers in a vase. And I love that I've got this overlapping bit of the hand towel with that beautiful fringed edge. I just think it adds a lovely sort of extra dimension. And as I think I mentioned before, I put a little loop in, made also from the same hand towel, and I used one of these little clips that I got off the piece of curtaining that I deconstructed. And it's great because I can just use it to then slip my little cloth through, and it will just hold that down. And I just did a few little, well, quite a few little stitches down the bottom just to hold that in place. And then, yeah, I've got another one of my hexagons here. And then down the sides, I just stitched all of them just with a little overstitch all the way down. As I'd mentioned, I think where you've got the double thickness of this particularly quite dense fabric, it was relatively hard going, but it was definitely doable. Just sat there and stitched away. So that will hold it nice and secure. Unclip it, and then inside you've got your beautiful pouch. And it doesn't matter that you've got some stitching showing through in the interior. It won't catch on anything. It's all sitting very, very flat. And there's a few little stitches along here where I actually added just a little down stitch when I was actually stitching this bit down. For this stitching along here, I just followed exactly along where the edge of the bag was. So there's just a fine line of stitching along there. I purposely used a green that was very similar to the green of the fabric, so the stitching blends in. I wasn't sure if I found it too hard stitching through the double fabric. I could have actually just done the stitching just inside where it's just the single layer on the front and the single layer on the back. So that is my joyful Martha. I'm going to call it my Martha bag, my Martha project bag. And Martha, I'll think of you whenever I'm using this one, and I'll use it with joy. So there you go. So hopefully that's given you an idea of a way you can repurpose something that you might find at the op shop. If you find a nice singular little placemat or tablecloth, little mini sort of table mat, you could definitely create this yourself. And because it is such a nice morning here, I'll give you a little view up of what's happening around the inlet. Just close your eyes if you don't want to watch the camera angling up. There we go. You can open your eyes now. So it's just a lovely morning, just that sun coming up over the distant mountains, and just that little bit of wispy cloud around where the sun is coming up. But the birds are singing. You can hear the distant waves breaking out on the sort of in the distance. I'll angle the camera around and you can actually see out to where the open ocean is. So just close your eyes for a moment if you don't want to watch the angling of the camera. Okay, you can open your eyes now. So in the distance where you can see that sea, that's out beyond where the inlet is. So where you look over the inlet here, and that's out to the open ocean. So I'm not sure if you can see, there's just some waves that are out there, and not sure if you can hear it, but yeah, you can hear the waves rolling in. So anyway, that is my video with my lovely project envelope. Really happy with that, really happy with the colours of it. And the embellishments, really happy to have used some of my lovely little hexagons, and also some of my lovely finds from here. So it will make a lovely souvenir of Melakuta. So I will let you all go. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Bye everyone.